Welcome to Shapify Experiences, a media web podcast where we have been talking about the future of digital experiences. And today we have with us Hugo Froes. Hello, Hugo. So you are working as head of product operations in ULX. What is that? What do you do actually?
Hi, Nelson. Thanks for the invite and thanks for having me. What does product operations do? It's an interesting job, right? Basically, what we do is we look at the internal functioning of the organization, the product organization, and we see where it can be improved. So we look at the ways of working, we look at the rituals, the habits, the way the teams are structured, the way they're organized, and we think about how we can optimize that. So I like to use the term, it's almost like internal service design.
Okay. So it's not just about the UX part of the product, but it's bigger than that. You exactly. have impact in the structure, how we organize the...
In the baseline, right, our product organization, our main purpose is to bring value to the customer, right? Mm-hmm. Bring a great experience to the customer. Our team looks and says, is there anything that's blocking us from doing that? Mm-hmm. And we try and see how we can optimize that, how we can help people upskill if the team isn't ready there, how we can build systems and infrastructures to help them also to do their job, and so to build better experiences for the customers.
Okay. And you're saying which kind of blocks you have to give value to the company and to the product? What are the main things that normally make that or the block the delivery of value?
It's multiple things, right? Sometimes, and the baseline one is the tech stack, right? Sometimes your tech stack is not in the right place, or you've got a lot of problems in your product as you've built it over the years. But then there's also the maturity of the teams. Sometimes there's blockers there. Sometimes, because for example, you've got people who haven't had the experience to build a complex product, or they've just joined the company a short time, mm-hmm. right? They're not in that place yet. And then sometimes, especially in big organizations that have scaled up really quickly, what you realize is that they haven't had time to scale up their practices. Mm-hmm. So they don't know how to get everyone all in the same direction, focused on the right things. And sometimes you have to relook at that and think, hold on, are we structured the right way? Are we prepared to do the things the right way? But also, are we able to support, are we able to make the right decisions, right? Mm-hmm. Because we've got tons of data, we've got tons of information, we're speaking to customers continuously, we're thinking about the experience, but it's very hard because then you've got teams who are working in silos and disconnected, so...
Yeah, when the company grows and start having multiple teams, it's getting harder to have all teams aligned with the same purpose and same objectives.
Exactly. And one really important point is the dependencies between teams, because in the beginning, if you've got two teams, they talk, they're in the same room, right? They can do something in 5 minutes. Whereas the minute you go to a big organization, you can't own the entire product. Mm-hmm. You're owning a part of the product, or you're running or fixing a part of the product. You might be dependent on other people that also need to do something there, or that need to fix them. And so that starts breaking down and people have difficulty there.
Okay, yeah, and you help making all working softly.
Hopefully, yes. It's a challenge. It's a challenge because we have to find the balance between enough chaos, because that's where the magic happens, mm-hmm. but enough consistency and direction so that people also know what's going on, and we can give them some structure, some focus, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and before you get to this position, can you tell us a little bit about your progress?
Yes. So I started in the design field. I started as a graphic designer over 26 years ago. Okay. And then roughly in 2007, I moved over into the digital realm. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was head of the creative area for one of our big retailers in Portugal, which is El Corte Inglés. And, basically building up the website, the e-commerce platform, that type of stuff. And then in 2012, I discovered the world of user experience, mm-hmm. the concepts of user experience. And I looked and I said, oh, this sounds interesting. And as I started digging in, I realized that I was doing most of it, but mm-hmm. there was a part that was missing. So I invested in my personal time. I started working a lot in the area to try and figure out more. And I started applying a lot of the logic and the methodologies in the work, right? Where we started seeing a growth and development. And, I've got some great results that we got because of that. And I found out I loved thinking about the user we were building for, right? Thinking about the experience we're putting in front of people, and not just a part of the experience, but the whole experience, right? Thinking about that thing so that it's holistic, it's comfortable, it's all connected. Then from there, I went into the product space. I went into consulting space where we were providing services, working with various customers, building products from the ground up. Anything from small startups to huge enterprise products. But it was super interesting because it gave me a lot of experience working in different types of environments. Then I went back into product working in Codacy, working as part of the growth team. And there it was continuous experimentation. It was super interesting because we were using a very much the lean UX way of working, which is I've got a hypothesis, I want to test it out, let's see what it does, and you generate growth based on these small little experiments you're always running. Then I moved into Teacup, which was in the public sector, and there we were working as a SWAT team where we were helping public entities to understand their digital transformation. We used to do co-design, service design, design thinking concepts, working with them, trying to solve the problem with them, thinking about their business model in some cases, rethinking about that, but sometimes also looking at their physical space and how they were working and the impact it had on their work. Then I went to Farfetch, and at that time what happened was I realized I wanted to help also organizations reach their peak and other people to reach their peak in terms of their quality and their maturity. And at the time I moved into the practice team in design at Farfetch, where we were helping the design teams helping the design organization be more structured, more focused, have consistency.
Okay.
And then the product side said, hey, we actually need this more here. Then design is kind of okay, and so we moved over into product side, and that's what happened. I was at Farfetch helping the product organization through a reorg, through all these changes, and then at OLX I was brought on for the Motors team, for a Motors area, as the product operations lead to implement product operations there. And then as of over about a year and a half ago, I became the head of product operations for OLX, where we also absorbed research and design operations all into one.
Okay, yeah, so really a big, a lot of changes during that process. And even some roles, I think that during that process, some roles appear, because you're saying you discovered UX. UX didn't exist, I will say, when you start. I remember at the beginning when we opened MediaWeb, at the time we were calling web designers to everyone, and most of them has as you graphic design background, and were someone that study graphic design and then start testing or start designing some websites, things like that. So what you're mentioning when you discover UX design. What is the main thing that people need to study when they want to evolve from a web designer to UX design?
I would say the main thing, actually, the first thing for people to work out is remove their ego from the equation, right? Because and people can go and say, oh, it's very hippie kind of way of looking at it, but the truth of the matter is, the minute we remove our ego, ourselves, from the topic, what happens is we start looking and we start realizing what the actual problems are, right? And what the actual need is, not our perception of what it should be, and that, because we have a tendency of projecting what we want to be, what we want the solution to be. And I remember I noticed this shift exactly when I was doing consulting, right? Where in the beginning I would go in there and we're talking to a customer, and halfway through the meeting you're almost presenting a solution, right? You're like, oh yes, we could do this, we could do that, and everything like that. And then I did this shift where I started telling people, you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm not going to go with any solutions. I'm just going to listen to the customer. And the truth of the matter is, by doing that, I would come away with much more potential for ideas, actually, than if I had started suggesting things, right? And sometimes the solution would be completely different to what you would initially guess. But we would work with the customers and show them that there's a potential to think of a solution, right? It wasn't the type of thing where, oh no, I'm not going to tell them I can't solve the problem, right? We could use examples and things like that. But what we would try to do was not be too concrete and go into a specific solution. And we'd say, but now we need time to think about it. We need time to understand the problem, right? And there it started becoming more interesting. But even when sitting down, observing or following customers or interviewing customers, if you're talking to them and you're not thinking about what you think they should be telling you, if you're not thinking about what you want to solve, it then becomes about, okay, I'm absorbing, I'm accepting, I'm taking...
Instead of influencing directly the direction, right? You give more space for them to share, and then later you you work on that instead of giving tips and then the direction start being defined.
Exactly. And that's where the gold happens, because that's when you actually find what's the underlying problem, right? Because if we start influencing, what happens is we usually come out with a Band-Aid solution. And by doing it where we spoke to the customers in this way, where it's like, no, I'm going to really listen to you, you start seeing behind the lines and you say, hold on, there's something underneath here. And then you can deep dive on that. Because you've realized you've just identified something. Hold on, let me hear a bit more about that. And you go back to that topic and you really get to the fundamental part of the problems.
Yeah. The thing about the ego, I think, is very important, really, also, because when you design something, I think the designers get that feeling like this is my design. Like I designed this and I like my solution. But the design serves the user. You need to resolve something for the user. If I put my ego apart, I directly get less frustrated when my design go to the trash. Because the objective is not for my design to be implemented. The objective is for me to test solutions and the design go to the trash multiple times until I get the better one. So if you have this mindset, we directly feel better, because we will not be feeling bad because my work is not going production, for example.
No, and that's the thing. I remember when I was younger and when I was starting out, I used to argue with passion, but this design, I don't think you're getting it, right? And that type of thing. For me, a game changer was reading Don Norman's book, right? The Design of Everyday Things, that everybody uses as a baseline. But what I loved was a simple point where he said there in the middle that, it's not the person's problem, or it's not the user that's making a mistake, or that they don't understand. It's the system that's badly designed, right? And he used an example of when there's human error in, like a big warehouse or something like that, right? And they go looking for the human error. And you look and you say, but no, the system was badly designed where that person could make that mistake.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
And there was a switch. It was like, I like that concept, right? And so I started, focusing more on that. Feedback became something where I would relish. I would want to go in and understand what was wrong with. People say, this is wrong, this is wrong. Okay, great. How can I make it better? Right? And it becomes more about them than me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I see that even in the developers. I remember some things from the past, like some interface that gives some errors or gives some things that you're not supposed to do when the user do some specific kind of task in developer, but the user don't know that you should not do that. The user can do whatever he wants to do. The interface should guide the user to not to do mistakes. If the interface let you make some mistakes, someone will do it.
No, and people hack, right? It's something I even use today. Any solution is incredible until you put it in front of a person, right? Yeah. Every single solution is correct. It's incredible. It's amazing. The minute you put it in front of people, that's when you'll discover if it is.
Yes.
Right. And so it's also important that testing, really interacting with the people, seeing them, really trying out what we build and create, and then trying to meet them where they need to.
Okay. And what about the different roles of design? What do you think about the? I see a lot of times, for example, the role of UX and UI designer. What do you think about this specialization or generalization of the roles?
Look, there's huge debates, right? They've been going on for over a decade about UX and UI, more so there, right? And now everybody's discussing how that's gone out the window, right? But what I think is, and I take away from the beginning of when I moved into the digital realm, right? I was doing the UX, the UI, the front-end CSS, JavaScript, all of that stuff. I learned back-end code as well, right? I was doing all of it, right? I was doing email marketings. I was doing all of it. Even motion graphics. We were doing motion graphics. We were doing all this stuff. Display ads, all of it. And we were doing incredible stuff, right? I was super happy with what we were doing. But what I realized was that you reach this point where you almost feel like you can't actually create the best solution possible, because you only give a bit of yourself across all these things, right? So I think there's space for the specialization, right? Is it in every organization? No. Is it in every context? No. right? What I think people are focused on is I have to have role A, B, C, D, E, F. But I've said it in various places, right? Which it's more about what does your company need? What does your context need? And you'll find that in some cases you will have a product designer. In other cases it's UX. Other people, researchers, right? Other times it's a full stack, right? You never know. It all depends. It also depends on how technical your product is versus how user interaction it is, right? All of these things make a difference, but there is space for that. All of them bring extra value, and we need to figure out what makes sense. You can't assume that it's just one size fits all, right? There are companies that might not need designers or product managers. It's scary.
Yeah, it will. So it basically depends on the complexity, I will say, of the project. If you have something simple enough that one guy that, as you were saying, that you're doing all of, not even UX UI, but more than that, if it's not complex enough and the person can solve that, it's enough. But when the product or the project start being complex, it start being necessary, the specialization, to go deep enough in the problem.
And be honest, right? Let's say, for example, that looking back, we do this front end, and you're an incredible designer, visual designer, you create incredible visuals. Almost 90%, and this is a number I'm throwing out, right? I'm making it up, but I can almost guarantee you that a large percentage of those designers will be terrible and crap at doing back end. Right? Not because they aren't capable of doing it, it's because they don't spend their free times thinking about it, investing in learning it and everything. And asking them to do that, it's almost ridiculous, right? It's like, no, I can get you to build incredible visuals, right? If I don't make you focus on back end. But now you have to do also back end. Your visuals are going to start going down, right? You can't do anything properly. So that's why. And
even if it's not back end, if it's just front end, okay, it's more close to design, but it's still code. It's not.
And even front end, right? It's not just HTML and CSS, right? Because you've got the whole interaction, the way the animation happens, right? All of that stuff, the feedback you get, those micro interactions of a little bubble. I'm sorry, but
it's too much.
It's incredibly hard.
Even in front end, you can split in different specializations. You can have front end guys more specialized in styles, others more specialized in JavaScript, frameworks.
No, and going back to the area of design specifically, right? And this is the debate we had. And I remember when we were in the consulting space, we were looking, and we had a very clear distinction between UX and UI, right? Because user experience was much more about thinking about the whole concept, the whole experience, right? Actually understanding the customer, their needs, and all this kind of stuff. Whereas the UI designer would take that and think about the interaction. It wasn't just, I'm going to create cool UI. It was the whole interaction, the animation, the micro interactions, all of these things that happen, the feedbacks they're getting. They were thinking about this together with the UX designer along with the front end. And there was space for all of us. We did incredible work because everyone was really, really focused and specialized on these things. So you could elevate the quality of each of these things, right?
Yeah, and you think it in service design, in product design, normally there are different, and maybe it will depend on the size again or the complexity. But my opinion, and I want to understand you think the same. It seems to me that when we are making services, normally it's more software. It's sometimes enterprise software, internal software, and the role of the designer that make multiple roles is more common than when we are talking about product design, because the product is the core of the business. So normally is really the core, and you need more the specialization.
I don't know if I have a complete concrete answer for that, right? Because I've seen a bit of everything, right? I've seen a bit of everything. Like, for example, in product organizations, you sometimes have where now we're going to hire researchers, right? And the researchers are going to be doing the strategic research. Product designers will be doing the tactical research. But then they hire service designers because they're looking at the product-facing customers, but they have to think about how is the service created underneath, or the systems that support what we produce. So all of these things, right? All of them, it changes in the context, and I don't think there's like I said, there's no one size fits all.
Completely.
But there's value in all of them that they can bring, but not in every single case.
Yeah, and it depends not just if it's service or product, but even what you are doing in that company. Yeah, the service can be making a product, for example.
Exactly, right? And sometimes the service can be just creating a system in the background that will support what's going on, right?
Yeah, and how you see the evolution of these roles?
I mean, obviously, the big hot topic is AI, right? How it's doing that. But then there's the things that we mentioned, which was everybody's a designer. If we've got great front end, we don't need designers, that kind of stuff, right? I think the roles will constantly keep changing. But what happens is, I think the people who are really good at the job, who are really qualified, who have built up the experience, the know-how, and really, I think they will become even more valuable, right? Because, for example, AI systems, right? Everybody talks about how AI systems will change the whole work system, and it's true, they will. But AI still touches on a very superficial thing, or AI does as much as it can, but it can't do everything. Right? So we need that human factor. We need the people who will validate whether AI is creating hallucinations, right? Whether what it's deciding to build is something that will solve the experience for the users, right? Or whether it's just dishing out something that is very similar to what everyone else is building out in the industry, right? If we want to be innovative, if we want to push the envelope, we will still need all these people coming in. That's where I think the expertise of also having the critical thinking, challenging AI, working with the AI, the people who accept it as an amplifier rather than, oh, this is something that's going to take my job. It's something that's going to amplify me. I'm going to be 500 times more effective. There's a huge potential there, right? I think there's a huge potential in people. It will change how we work. That's definitely going to change, right? And so, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just complimenting that. The AI still needs us to define what to do. Like the AI doesn't do nothing by itself. We need to say, hey, look, I want the app to do this. And I need to describe how I want the app to work. And if the user experience is not, if I don't have in mind a good way of that app to work, the solution that the AI will give us will be very generalistic, will be very common, will not be innovative. So I believe, and maybe you can compliment me on that, the role of user experience, I think, is more important now in our days.
But that's the thing. That's the interesting thing. I think you're right there. And I think user experience, we have to think more beyond, because everybody tried to fit user experience in the concept of user interfaces, right? But if you look at user experience as building the experience, you're going to need highly knowledgeable people in that, and it becomes even more important, and it's the game changer, because it's what will be the differentiator between you and other areas, right? Sometimes even going to things that are retro, that AI has forgotten existed, right? But because the market is now so modern and everything, hey, let's go something retro, crazy. Let's try something, and you create this buzz. But it's also about that thing where they think about the interaction that the user is going to have with the AI, right? That AI, does a user want to understand this AI, or do they want to feel like it's human? Do they want to, does it have to be natural, where I can talk like a normal person, where it can understand accents, or do I actually want something that's going to challenge me to do a different way of interacting, right? Is it by gesture? Is it facial expression? Right? All of these things, the interaction still needs to happen. And so you start thinking about this, the context. Like, for example, I can talk to AI, great, but you're in the middle of this noisy street in some way, and now suddenly I have an emergency, and AI can't listen because of all that's happening on, right? All of these little things, you will have to think about these things. And so the user experience becomes even more important, because it's how do we interact with the AI, and how do we work together with the AI, right? Also, even thinking about that, how do we even change how we work? How do we think about my job and my future, where AI is part of it, right? I think that's going to be challenging, because a lot of people are looking and thinking, well, I can be substituted. You're like, yes, you can. Right?
If you don't adapt.
We can. I mean, I think there was a study that came out that I think it was 80 or 90% of white-collar jobs will be substituted in a couple of years, right? You're looking and think, well, oh, crap, right? All of us are screwed. But the truth of the matter is that it's never just that simple, right? And one thing I found is, whenever we become too comfortable in an automated system, it's exactly and solely depend on it. That's when it starts breaking down. And if we're not checking it, if we're not validating it, if there isn't that control and that connectivity, it will break down in the long run, right? And we don't even realize it, right? So I think there's potential for all of us to get along, but roles will change, jobs will change. We have to adapt to it.
Completely. Yeah. In this part of the AI, one thing that I think is very important is you're saying just before, like AI can help us making things fast and prototype and being a starting point, like starting a new conversation, and instead of starting from nothing, prototype something fast with AI. But then there is the specialization. There is the guy that is that have knowledge, deep knowledge in UI will look to the UI that is already pre-built and will improve it. It will make the micro interactions. It will make the things that make the difference between making that product not equal to all of the others, but something unique comparing to other of the platform.
That's exactly it. There's this space for uniqueness, right? That we have to look at. And for example, I saw a great example of this, which was a product manager using AI for building a prototype, right? And designers could have looked at it and said, oh, I feel like they're encroaching on my space. I'm not, But the incredible thing is the designers and the PM realized that now they could have real concrete conversations, because sometimes a product manager will sit there and say, you know what, I'm kind of thinking, and the designer goes away, I'm going to build something.
Need to guess, and some days later or hours show, is this that you were thinking?
Exactly. Now here what happens is they're having real concrete conversations. They've just saved 50% of their time, right? They're actually looking at it and they're saying, well, that's great. I love the idea, but I don't like this because of this. I think this won't affect, and you have to think, but there you can focus on the experience. You don't almost have to focus on the stuff of building anymore. You can almost focus on exactly the experience, the sensations, how it connects, how it is actually. It gives people space to actually focus on what we want to, right?
And sometimes the AI even give good suggestions. It happened to me already that we were thinking the design. It happened actually in one design that we did, that we made the design, and then instead of trying to replicate that design, we asked the AI to make that. We give the objective to make that design, and the AI it makes something different, but some parts were interesting, some part of the interaction. So now we merge things together and have something even better.
And that's a perfectly good example. I mean, I've done that even with writing. When we're thinking about an experience or a situation, we have what's in our head or things we've observed, and we start writing it out, right? And with AI, I turn around and I ask the question, and it generates. And you look, and there's always these little spotlights of things like, I would never have thought of that. That's incredible. That's amazing. That has already expanded my thinking. But then you look and you say, but hold on a sec. That kind of seems superficial. And you challenge it, and you start challenging it and working. But working with it, you can get to really great things, right? But you don't stop building yourself. You just build it a different way. Right? Yeah. And obviously AI isn't in the place where you can build everything incredibly, where a designer and an engineer can be completely substituted, right? Because we know it's still at that stage where it's still learning how to do these things properly and building great code and all that. But even so, if we learn how to work now, in the future, it'll be easier.
It'll be easy. Yeah. And I think that is kind of a trend a little bit now that first everyone was thinking that AI will do everything, and trying AI and trying to make vibe coding, maybe making directly things in code instead of designing, and realizing later that it's still not there. We still need the specialization, because these products that gives you the superficial part that you need to interact on top of it.
I saw a really good case where there was this whole product that they were creating products for other people, and they were using AI. It was all powered by AI, and then the CEO had to go online and ask for engineers to come in to validate all the code, because tons of stuff, they did it all, it was incredible, it looked incredible, but half the stuff wasn't working or was falling apart. And they're like, okay, you can't just go all out in and AI, but you probably don't need 50 people. Right? Yeah. Maybe you can get along with 4 or 5 people, right? Yeah. And maybe the experience, and I think even for people coming into the job market, where it will be a bit more challenging sometimes maybe, is they almost have to build up higher specialization before joining the job market. Whereas, you now, before you had 10 years where you could build that up and you get that experience, that know-how, you make a few mistakes and everything. Now what happens is, because They can't, AI can do a lot of these things or will be able to do. They have to be able to sit with AI and build together. And without the critical thinking, without that experience, without that expertise, it will be hard because what we'll see is a lot of generic stuff, right?
Yes. I think the people that are already senior. I remember a comment of someone some days ago saying that he was sad about the ones that didn't get senior until today, because the ones that have experience, they can leverage AI much faster because they were able to do it before, and now with AI they make it much faster. They scale their work much faster. But in the other side, the people that are more junior, I think they depend. Not that they depend. They have more difficulties trying to use these tools because these tools they work a little bit like a junior. These tools also do the basic stuff, but they need to know what to do, and that is the hardest part. That is the hardest part, understanding the vision, understanding how to make things.
I think there's a mix here because, I think you're right that it is to an extent like working with a junior. But what we do see with folks who are junior who are coming in, right, they have a higher adoption. They're more willing to test out these things. They then need the critical thinking and all that. With the more experienced people, and that's where we have to see, a lot of the experienced people are kind of fighting against it. Right?
It's a good point.
They can get tons of value, and their experience will be invaluable. But a lot of them are fighting against it.
Yeah.
Right. They're looking and they're saying, "Oh yeah, but it's hype," or "No, because you can never substitute humans." It's like it's not about substituting humans, right? But it's around working with it. Working together.
Yeah, I see two different cases. The ones that adopt. That directly decided to adopt and use it and can leverage their work, and then the others that still working in the normal way and kind of fight against it. But for sure, the juniors ones are open to in MediaWeb. The main persons that are testing this kind of tools are the juniors. They are learning in a new way. They are learning using systems that generate code, and there is a risk there also because they might be just generating code or the design instead of trying to learn. But one thing that we are trying is don't generate also code. Ask if necessary for the AI also to explain you what is there to help you learn in the way during developing.
Well, it's interesting. For example, I remember the first time I tried selling AI was before the hype happened and everything, and working with a public entity. And we went in and we presented that we could automate some systems, and using AI, it could do a pre-analysis of a whole bunch of things for them, right? And the person at the time turned around and said, "I'm sorry, we're not going to substitute people because the value of the people doing this work and everything is incredible." But we'd done a pre-analysis of the way they worked and what they were doing, and we were able to turn around and said, No, you're right. There's going to be a human validation at the end. That's what we guarantee. However, all those other 5 things you said you can never have time to do? Now you have time to do them. Because the terrible stuff is being handled by AI for you. It's doing a pre-work for you. And they turned around and said, "Oh." You could see that kind of, now I'm liking it, right? And that's where we saw a shift in even their conversation, where they started talking about it as if it's a part of their work and how they could, they started seeing actually the fun that their work could be because they could focus on the stuff that was really interesting and where the human factor is super important. Yeah,
and I think that should be the use case in general about AI. Every company should have things that they don't have time to do. So if you can automate the tasks that AI can do, then you'll have time for people to look to that projects that are in the shelf and try to make them live. No, actually going back a little bit to the user experience part, AI can help you also. We actually talk a little bit about this. We were talking about the product, how we can make the product, but it can help our process of making design. Are you using already this kind of systems?
Yes, we're using them every single day. right? So, a lot of the stuff, for example, in our research teams or, in research teams, one of the things we sat down, we looked at and said, you know what? There's tons of stuff I do that I spend hours doing. For example, when you do an interview, you've got tons of text. Maybe you have to do a transcription, right? In other cases, for example, you have to then summarize that. You have to create a report. You have to do a whole bunch of stuff, right? And the researchers I know, that's the part they hate they hate the most, right? What they love is interviewing users, interacting and observing users, and then at the end, sharing the insights, helping other folks build from those insights. And doing this piece of work, right, with always the human validation, but we were able to cut maybe a lot of the effort in half in some cases, or even more, right? Because now it was the type of thing where it wouldn't be an entire week to sift through all of this stuff. You can just have AI going through it really quickly, right?
Yeah, all of the processing after the interviews.
Exactly. Yeah, all of that was super helpful. But we're also seeing it exactly how PMs are interacting with teams, right? Even how people are writing code. They're using these systems to help write code, and then they're validating the code. They're checking if it's right. But at least it helps in writing it a lot quicker. One of my previous companies, Codacy, they're doing an incredible thing, which is they also have now their systems that they're now looking at how you analyze the quality of AI-generated code, right? Because it's exactly that. It generates incredible code. But you look and you say, it does a ton of great stuff, but something always breaks. And so it now helps you look through that and see, okay, where's it going to break? Where's there no consistency in your code and things like that? So I think we're seeing this thing where people are adopting it. They're seeing real use cases where they can apply it, right? We also have to be careful where it's not all use cases, right? There's some that could be just simple automation, and people just want to throw AI at it, right? AI also takes a lot of processing to do, and it's very complex. That's why I think the agents are the new thing that everybody's talking about. But it's like I say, it's a very simple logic of, if you throw a question at an AI system and it has to go through, I don't know how many trillions bytes of data and everything like that, versus you have an agent which is focused on a topic and you ask on that topic, and it only has to go through, let's say, 500 gigs of information. It's different, right? It's processing speed, even what it's spending in terms of electricity, in terms of all those other things, it makes a huge difference. And that's why I think the agents are growing right now, because it can be focused, but you can also, shape it in a specific area, in a specific thing. Whereas trying to shape something that's very conceptual, very loose, very open, it becomes more complicated.
Yeah, it can be good making specific tasks with training, and then during the design process we can have multiple agents or multiple AI tools specific for specific needs.
The specialization.
Yeah, the specializations start being not just for humans, but for agents also.
Exactly.
Completely. And about like for us to design good products in our days, we need to incorporate AI in the software itself. How you think? Like, is a big shift also in the way that the designers create a design. They need now to understand that AI should be. I start saying kind of AI first design, like thinking in first. What can I automate in this design for the application to be not outdated, for the automation instead of the user need to do everything manual in the interface. Now the interface have some little parts that can do things automatically. Do you think that the designers are prepared for that? Like they can understand how to incorporate AI stuff in the design?
Not all designers. I think it goes back to even the principles of UX, right? Which is, I'm going to identify a problem and I'm going to try and figure out the best way to solve it, right? And a lot of people, it's not just about throwing AI in the beginning. It's about looking and saying, I have a problem I want to solve, right? Previously, we used to have to think about 20 steps. The difference is now you turn around and say, I can do it in 2, right? That's perfect. That's harder, because even when we had the 20 steps, people had difficulty. And as we saw technology evolving, as we saw, we have more capabilities in our products, we could reduce those steps. And very often we would never go back and reduce those steps, right? We would keep those 20 steps, and now we just add new features, new bells and whistles and things like that, right? With AI, it is that type of thing where we will have to look and say, you know what, I could, the person could do this, the person could do that. And you're like, hold on a sec. No, the person talks for 5 minutes with the system and it's got all the information it needs. Or it uploads a document and automatically it just does all the recognition and it does all the stuff for me, right? And it fills out everything for me. We will have to think about simplifying that thing, right? And it's not necessarily new.
True.
Okay, I think we have had difficulty in it because, for example, the simple thing of, when you upload a document, a PDF, and you've got forms that can automatically be filled in. It's interesting how many platforms could be doing this already, and they don't.
And don't.
Right?
Yeah.
Just there, it's a simple way where you look at it and you say, in most cases, we're not ready to use AI to its full potential, right? I think we still have to learn. I think we still have...
Yeah.
People have to do a complete shift in the way they approach this.
My question is really because of that, because I think it's harder now. Like if you automate more stuff, it means that the designer or the team that is creating that software, that is designing, I will say like that, the software, they need to think much more in what happened in the background and not in the interface. Instead of designing the 20 step, if that 20 step is 2 steps, then 18 steps happen in the background.
Exactly.
And that 18 steps, understand how that 18 steps happen is not visual design anymore. Is agents, automations, some integrations. So it's kind of more logic thinking.
And even those 18 steps in the background, right? What happens is the shift will have to be around how do I optimize those 18 steps? Or how do I change the way those 18 steps are done? Because even the AI, it can be instant, right? Where for us it's instant, but the AI has gone through. But you start realizing the bills are very high because it's processing tons of stuff, right? It's using up all my energy, it's using whatever, right? So you think, hold on, can we do this in a simpler way? And so I think potentially there's even the experience of thinking internally for the agents.
Yeah.
How do we make the agents even better?
Yeah, that is even... other steps. So like we were passing we were delegating the 18 steps to multiple agents, but we can even go further and start thinking how we can optimize all of the tasks that the agents need to do and make them be more efficient in making less steps.
Because
also.
a lot of the things will not be just about the time anymore. It'll be about other things like the spending, the amount, the processing that is needed, right? Because exactly, every time something is processing for us in AI, we're paying for it, right?
Yeah.
Whether
So
it
it
be
needs to be optimized.
electricity, or what we're pushing from the models, right? So you need to optimize this. You want agents help that to an extent, but you want to optimize it even further, where it's like instead of 3 agents working, can I put 1 agent, right? Yeah. Does this then mean it has to be a complete complex agent? No, I can focus them still, right? It's these things we have to think. So even that, which we'll have to keep thinking.
Even which agent, if I should use an agent that costs more, that is more processed, or if I should use a simple agent because it's a small task, all of this part. And here is became maybe more engineering. Yeah, but it's part of the design also.
Because sometimes it's also the prompt engineering you're using, right? You can optimize that. But I also think there's also space, and this is another thing, right? It's not just about continuous optimization. Sometimes, for things to be better, we actually have to add some extra friction. And I think we also have to think with AI, there's a tendency of thinking, we're going to make everything simpler, right? But the truth of the matter is, in some aspects, and I think that there was a business case a couple of years ago, right, which was an insurance agency where you would add your stuff there and everything, and instantly you had all the information, and it already had a quote. It told you exactly how much you were going to pay in insurance. Customers didn't trust it. They said, what the hell's going on? This was too quick. It didn't really think about it, right? What they had to do was intentionally add a pause, a delay, a thinking time.
Like
it was instantly done.
Someone is validating the thing, but it's done already.
Right? And I think we also have to take so again, the user experience is important here because we have to think about the impact of who's interacting with it.
The perspective of the user.
The perspective of them on the other end, right? It's like you can tell them, AI did this. Half of the people will look and say, I don't trust it. I need a human to validate this, right? If you turn around and said, you know what, it was validated by these 3 people, they're like, okay, I understand. And you've got checkpoints, you can show how it was validated, that all of these little things have an impact. So sometimes we have to add that friction. And so I think
that is a good point also. And it's also a trend that I'm seeing, like the human in the loop, the giving trust about these product AIs. Like they can have AI, but the user need to feel not just trust, but also understand what is happening, have the vision, because sometimes a lot of things happen in the background, And if you don't know what is happening, that doesn't give you trust. Even if a lot of things happen automatically, the interface should show you the steps and what happened in background.
People like to understand how things happen, right? They don't trust anything that's simple, instantaneous.
Yeah, that's magic. Just happened.
Exactly, right? Funny enough, though, people love to almost take the first impression of what something is. And that's where the critical thinking comes into place and everything. But yeah, sometimes they question the wrong things. But, that's human nature. We're complex. We're not easy.
Completely.
Exactly. So we have to have the user experience part, right? Because AI, don't get me wrong, there is some AI that can already look at facial expressions and see how people are interacting and everything like that. But that process and getting to that point, sometimes it's not that easy, right? Because it might grab from what it knows or what it's been able to extract from the internet. But the truth of the matter is not that many incredible experiences have been created, right?
Completely.
So there's tons of space for, hey, you're just not going to get it right, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a good takeaway. We are getting without time. Thank you, Hugo, for being here. Maybe you can recap a little bit what we talked here today. So since the evolution of the UX in general, since the web development or web designers to UX designers, and now all of this change also in the process. We talk a little bit about your progress or your background, the difference between user experience, user interface, the roles in each company, your role, the head of product, the product operations, what that means. Yeah, it was a good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was really great, and I really enjoyed the exchange of ideas.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for everyone. See you next time.